Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Recruiters with No Limits. Always live and never scripted. Here with my sidekick and co-host for 2023, Johnny Ruffini. What's up, buddy?
Richard, Happy New Year, my friend.
Oh, man. I tell you what, man, we made it, man. Another year. But hey, John, we're not going to even waste any time, man. We got the man down below. You ready to hear this guy? Danny Cahill. What's up, buddy?
How are you guys? Happy New Year.
Good. Happy New Year. Hey, John, I gotta throw this out there. Danny already had his workout in, man.
You know, he practices that mind, body, spirit thing. You know, he's always taking care of all aspects of life. No, we're psyched to have you. It's funny because on our flyer, Richard so nicely coined me the recruiting guru. In reality, the gentleman we have on this show is widely known as a true recruiting guru. So I'm gonna ask you a question right out of the gate, Danny.
Sure.
Unlike, many of us fall into this business. You went into it right out of school.
Yeah.
Did you know, like, was there something that drew you to it that, hey, that's what I want to do? Because a lot of people don't have that when it comes to the staffing and recruiting industry.
Oh, no. And I'm always deeply suspicious of anybody who tells you that their life, like in a linear fashion, rolled out just the way they wanted it to. I was an English major coming out in the worst recession since the Great Depression. I was getting pressure from my girlfriend's father because I wanted to keep dating her, and he was not happy about the fact that I had no plans. So I literally answered an ad for a trainee at a recruiting firm, had no clue what they did. I literally didn't know, but I crushed the interview. I got the job, straight commission in those days. And I went home and told my dad I got a job. He was thrilled. He said, "How much does it pay?" I said, "Nothing." And he gave me that look I'd seen so many times in my life, like, this kid. But for me, so I literally had no idea. I just figured out that if you have to place people, then obviously you have to talk to people. And without any, I was very opposed to the idea of selling because I thought it was manipulative and, evil. And unlike so many other people who I see struggle as new recruiters, I hate to say it, it was just never hard for me. I saw it as a game of wits. I thought it was a blast. I had high energy. I was communicative. To me, I was raised poor, so if it didn't work out, fine. I had nothing to lose. I saw it as a lark. But in the 1982, First College made about $17,000, and I made $250,000. Everybody thought I was dealing drugs, and I was like, no, I'm paying cash for the ones I do, but I'm not doing them. So
oh my! So
really,
I
just a confluence of luck and opportunity. The guy saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I just said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it well. He said, make 75 calls a day. So I made 150. Once the money started coming in, I was like, well, I don't understand why everybody doesn't do this. You're in an air-conditioned office all day. You make calls and you goof around with your friends in a cubicle. They become your buddies, and you help people find jobs. I saw myself as sort of this corporate version of Robin Hood, stealing the good people from the bad companies and sending them to the good companies. And I sort of still see it that way. So yeah,
I love it. Really. So I got to ask you, on your first paychecks, Danny, how much money did you spend on protein supplements?
Back in those days, I know John was just kidding, but in those days I was a tennis player and a cardio guy. But so at age 24, 2 years into the business, I was made manager. So I knew my career was going well. And I just, it sounds so ridiculous now to even say it. I just said, you get one life, and I want to maximize my mind, my spirit, my body. And so I started taking graduate classes at Wesleyan University at night. And I said, I like the way these guys in the gym look. What do they do? And I just went over to his name was Lindy. I still remember his name was Lindy. And I just went over to him and I said, can you tell me how to eat and what to do? and this is a good lesson for your listeners. If there's a top producer in their office, the top producers in any field, you know, the biggest badass bodybuilder in the gym would be happy to sit you down and write out a workout routine for you and tell you what to eat. You just got to ask them. And that's true in all walks of life. I've just found, you know, if I wasn't sure whether to go into a niche, I would call a bunch of CEOs and say, look, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just don't know. Should I be in life sciences? And I never found one who wasn't nice about it. You know, so the bigger people are, I'm always amazed at a conference, somebody will come up to me when I'm walking out of a room and say, hey, I'm really sorry. Can you talk to me for a minute about this situation? Well, in what world do I not have a minute for a recruiter? Like, I was a recruiter. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So, I mean, people have to get over that. If you want to be successful, then you go to the most successful person you can find and you ask for some of their time. I promise you'll get it. And the ones who don't give it to you, go to hell.
Yeah, to your point, there's so many people, most people are either not willing to, or they're afraid to do that for whatever reason. But you're absolutely right. You know, I haven't met one person who wasn't willing to give of their time and expertise to help someone else along, you know, get where they were in that moment.
Yeah. And not to torture the analogy, but Richard and I were talking about, you know, this is the time of year when new people are in the gym. And I just experienced it an hour ago. So it's the new year. Someone gave you a gym membership. So now you don't know what you're doing. It always amazes me how somebody will walk up to somebody who has a dad bod, who clearly does not look the way you want to look, and ask him or her about their workout routine. It happens all the time. I see recruiters who are billing next to nothing, giving advice to rookies. What are you doing? Like, I don't want to know what you do. I want to do the opposite of what you do. If anything, I would observe what they did and do just the opposite, and you'll probably succeed. But what you learn is people who are willing to give advice, generally speaking, don't have any advice worth taking. So let's make sure this is a person who's done what you want to do before you ask for help.
Great advice.
Yeah.
That is.
Why do you think, so you came out and you were successful and you continue to be successful, ended up, you know, buying the firm that you went to work for,
right.
And still run it to this day.
Sure.
Why do you think you as a recruiter were successful when so many try to come into our business thinking it's easy and they fail?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think that answer's changed over the years, right? So if you had asked me that question, John, and maybe you did 20 years ago when we were chatting, but if you asked me that 20 years ago, it's, you know, they don't have what it takes. They're not being classically sales trained. They don't have the energy. They're wasting their time. You know, I would go on this rant about how everybody has ambition, but very few people have drive. And it was all about, you didn't want it as bad. But now that answer is very different, I think. Now, for one thing, I never in my training with my new people here or with According to Danny, you'll never hear me talk about what I did when I ran a desk, even though I ran a desk at a very high level for a very long time. And I'm really proud of what I did, but almost none of it is relevant today. If you did what I did today, if you made 150 calls a day, just out into the ether, you would fail. There's no question. It was the key to my succeeding, and it would be the key to your failure if you did it today. So today, there's this multi-platform approach. Like, I spend a lot of my time teaching the correct way to get a reply to an email. So, for example, the fundamental difference is most people today who are successful use email on the front end as a way to figure out who among the people that respond to the email you will then have a phone call with. So email blast on the candidate side, for example, but on the client side too, email blast goes out after you've done, you know, a search on your LinkedIn recruiter or in your actual staffing software, in your CRM. So you send out an email blast, 40 people respond. Now you put those 40 people on your calendar, and that's your call list tomorrow.
Yep.
That's very different than starting with a call list, and then if they don't respond, sending them an email. I mean, it's fundamentally different. So So now if you ask me, so why are people struggling? I don't know. You got to give me a minute. Let me read their emails. Maybe they're writing crappy emails. Maybe they don't understand that 80% of email is your subject line.
Yes,
And you're taking way too long to write your email. But the point is, I think what's key for people like me is not to say, God damn it, you're going to do it the way I did it because it worked for me.
Bingo.
Who cares what worked for you? So I pride myself on adapting to markets, to training realities. I think the nature of selling has changed. I think if you sold the way I sold, I used to take a lot of pride that I could talk anybody into anything if you gave me enough time. Like I lived for overcoming, objections. And now we've tried to change that language in my training. Like just the idea of it is confrontational. Why do we have to overcome objections? Why do we have to push back? We've tried to turn it because it's a Gen Z world and, they get a lot of flack, but I think they're amazingly wonderful people.
100%, man.
They're kind, they're diverse. They don't like being pushed and they don't like being sold by manipulation. So we've tried to teach that sales is not something you do to someone. It's something you do with. Selling isn't something I do to you. It's something I do with you and for you. And so you have to recalibrate some basic precepts in order to get new people up and running. And long-winded answer to your question, the turnover rate is still alarmingly high in search firms, but the owner tends to blame today's recruiter just isn't as good as the old days. But when I dig in, when I'm brought in as a consultant, a lot of times after 2 days of observing a firm, I sit down with the owner and the owner wants me to rag on all his people and confirm his belief that his people all suck. And I just go, dude, you got to change. This is on you. Your people are fine. Your people are fine. The problem's you. And this is the nice thing about being me at this point in my life, because I'm too old and I'm too rich to worry about if he doesn't like me and he won't bring me back or he ends on my consulting relationship. Fine. I'm just going to tell you what I saw. And I try to live that. Like I will listen to my people if they say in a very nice way, dude, that's not how it's done anymore. You got to let that go. Okay. That's fine. Gone. Mm-hmm. You'll never hear from me again.
Yeah,
that makes sense?
It makes total sense. And you're absolutely right. A lot of the fundamentals of the business have maintained their consistency. Sure. But how we implement them, I totally agree. You have to adapt with the changing markets. And what you said is correct. And the whole idea about, that initial outreach now is almost always electronic in some way, form, or fashion.
Yeah.
You still have to get them on the phone. That's the only way you're going to build that relationship. But I always like to think that if, in sales, if you do your job right, you never really have to sell anything.
Never.
Correct.
Because, you provide that solution. It's all about like listening.
Yeah.
And that's, so I agree with you.
But I will say this though, because Richard and I were talking before we started this about, there are people who are struggling and they're going to struggle even more in 23. And just to, push back against what I just said, everything I just said is true. At the same time, when a market contracts, this is contraction by design by the Fed, right? They're trying to find that delicate balance where they slow down the economy to bring inflation down without killing it. But that's a delicate balance. And it's going to go one of 3 ways, right? It's going to go, they got it all wrong. They did it. They raised the rates too fast, huge recession. Everything's horrible, unlikely, but possible. Or they're going to find that soft landing and it's going to be great. It's going to be 4.5% unemployment instead of 3.6. So there's still a lot of business out there. And the plus side of that is candidates may not be as arrogant, right? And you may be able to get them. More likely it's going to be somewhere in between. And by that, I mean, right now, if you're in manufacturing, healthcare, life sciences, med device, hospitality, ironically, after COVID has bounced back so much, you're probably not going to see anything but a great market. And you're like, what is everybody complaining about? But if you are in technology, it's a recession in technology. There's no question about it. They've eliminated jobs faster in the technology sector than they did during COVID. So my point is, if you're in technology, or if you're in if there's that middle ground where it's a a soft landing, but it's slower if you don't get on the phone and raise some hell. If, so everything I said is true, but we certainly about 4 months ago, we just said, look, this market is real. We're pretty diversified here, but we have a technology practice, and the technology practice had to go old school. You grab an MPC, you make a ton of calls. Sure, you're still doing email outreaches. Sure, you're doing your cadence email. Sure, you're following up on postings. But from 20% of cold calling, we went to 60% of cold calling. And guess what? Then you get jobs. So I do think anybody listening to this who's in technology, if you're sitting back going, oh, it'll come back soon. Technology is weird because it does tend to go down when interest rates go up really dramatically. And it does tend to bounce back faster. But what if that's 2 quarters? What if that's 3 quarters? Our industry, as you guys know, is famous for, I'm going to hold on. It'll be back next month. Meanwhile, you've got 4 sourcers that are on the payroll that have nothing to do. And you're not doing them any favors by keeping them, right? We're seeing about 30% of the people that send us their resume are talent act people who've just been laid off. So in technology, it is a recession. So part of this is, like politics, it's all local. Depends on what your niche is.
Okay, Danny, so I got to ask you this, and you're out in the field and all this with the recruiters. How many of them are using the AI and that's all they're doing? What I see is they're just spamming people over and over again, sales reps. You see that a lot?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get them on the phone?
It's really, really amazing to me how it got so bad the last couple of years, bad because the market was so great that it's very hard to tell a recruiter who's billing $800,000 that he's not making enough calls.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to a point where you're like, I have better things to do than try to harass this top producer who's making me a lot of money. But, I saw that as my job. I saw that as my job of saying, look, I know you see me coming down the hall and you think nothing ever pleases this guy, but I'm telling you, this will turn. And when it turns, you're not going to hear from anybody. Most people in the last couple of years, Richard, you're 100% right, using AI-enhanced tools for reach out. They were, and I've done this, I have a consulting practice of the top producers in the country, all $1 million producers. There's 12 of them currently in my mentoring practice. Every one of them said they got about 70 to 75% of their business from current clients calling them. Some of them would tell me, I won't name the person because I don't want to embarrass her. She would say, I don't think I've made a true cold call since like 2018. Okay, so now if you think about it, that's 5 years ago. You're scared to death. You're beyond a rookie because now you're ashamed because you think you should be good, but you don't know what to say to anybody. And you're so used to just sending out your emails and hoping that the AI will give you some heads up. And look, I'm not saying you shouldn't use predictive tools. I'm saying they're not magic anymore. Plus, there's so much competition. Something as simple as if I see on LinkedIn that it says, hey, John Ruffini just got a job. Congratulate John Ruffini. Yeah, hell, I'm going to call him and say, hey, congratulations, you got a job. Why'd you leave your company? Did they replace you? Who'd you work for? Where else did you interview? I'm not saying you shouldn't use predictive tools like that. You should, of course. But most of the job orders in my firm that we had a very big December after having a pretty crappy October because there's a lag, right? I mean, that's the thing about our business. Like, I knew we were going to have a crappy October because our send-outs and job orders were down in late August and early September. Well, there's a 3 to 4 week cycle, right? But then because I said, look, let's go back into BD. Let's be all phone all the time. Let's be aggressive, not passive. There's less jobs out there, but we got the ones that were out there. And now we're pretty much at goal. So it all depends on what sector you're in and to what degree you're capable of diluting yourself. It's, if anything, I've noticed in my experience, both in my situation and the top producers that became managers that I know, is they're just wholly incapable of kidding themselves. Like, it's bad. I'm not going to say it isn't bad. I'm not going to go on vacation for 2 weeks and hope when I come back, I'll start over. I'm not going to go learn to meditate. No, I'm going to face this. We need job orders. Let's go. Right.
To your
that's
point,
hard
being
to do when
proactive
you've had
about
3
it.
or 4 years of a great market. It's hard.
Yeah, but that proactive mindset, to your point earlier, really wins out, in the long run. And the three of us have been around in this business long enough that we've been through recessions.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of recruiters that got in, to your point, and they know nothing but a good market. So
Yeah.
it's incumbent upon people like us to kind of give them a heads up and say, hey, I know what's coming, and here's how you can get through it. You might have to do more work to get the same
Absolutely.
amount of activity going on, but it's going to pay off.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, I didn't even realize this until I was interviewing a rookie for here. And I like to get them right out of school because that's how I started. And I'm pretty good at, just taking them under my wing and brainwashing them. And
Yeah, you're okay at that.
they're a clean slate. Yeah, absolutely. And they're great. They're funny. They're hilarious. They have so much
Vince
energy.
Lombardi of staffing.
Yeah, they're not angry at life yet. It's fantastic. But this is the first year I've interviewed people who, when I say, look, we're not old school. We're not saying you have to come in here 5 days a week, but you do have to come in 5 days a week for a few months. And then we have a hybrid model once you show that you're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And that was a hard thing for me to do too, because some of my people went away during COVID and worked remote, and they're not coming back, and they don't want to come back, and I don't blame them. But for new people, I feel like they have to be in the environment. And this is the first time I've had people, without sarcasm, without irony, say to me, I don't understand. What do you mean you don't understand? But think about it. If you just came out of college, 2 of those years were COVID years. So we're now 3 years into COVID. So they spent the majority of their college career working from their bedroom or their parents' house. So to John's point, there's an awful lot of people who got into business in 2017, 18, who not only don't know a bad market, they don't even know a good market. They only know an amazing market, right? So I literally had to say to this rookie last week, no, you don't understand. People like go into offices and they get trained and they were like, why would you do that? Like if I have a cloud computing system and I'm set up in my bedroom at home, why would I drive 40 minutes on the highway to get into an office where I can look at a screen that I can look at now and then drive home at night? Like they looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, am I crazy? I did that for like 100 years. Am I crazy? Yeah. But they don't know the difference, to John's point. So if you take somebody who's never made a BD call and you say, so what you were doing where you sent out these cadence things and you set up templates and then job orders came, that's not going to work anymore. They look at you the same way that rookie looked at me, and they were just like, what do you mean? Like, why would you want me to call them without even knowing if they have an opening? You want me to intrude and bother them? Like it's a thing. Yeah.
And I remember the first time a recruiter said to me, when we were talking about recruiting methods and calling candidates, and they had no contact information for this candidate, but they had their name. And I said, well, you have their name and you know where they work. And they looked at me just like with the deer in headlights. And I said, call their work. And they're like, I can do that? I'm like, yes, you can do that.
Yes, that is allowed. That is allowed. Yeah.
So Danny, how do you get them in the office? Do you like bring them like food, or how do they get in there?
Yeah, believe me, guys, that was the hardest part, of COVID, right? So I'm in Connecticut, so the front end of it was pretty easy because we were ground zero. Like that rest home in Westchester that was the literally ground zero for COVID is 65 minutes from my office. So when the rest of the country is saying, well, I don't know anybody who has COVID, we were seeing the body bags, and everybody in the office knew somebody who. So Connecticut shut down hard. So I didn't have any choice. It was like, we got to set up everybody at home. I spent a lot of money getting everybody the computerization they needed. And, like anything else, when you're forced to do something, good things come out of it. So, instead of having big computer towers with processors under the desk, now we have a plug and play like Facebook or Twitter. Everybody's got a laptop. You can come in the office and plug in anywhere. No longer have a seats in one place. You can be anywhere. But we moved from if you're productive and senior, you can stay home, to a hybrid model where we think you should come in because you'll be more productive. But then if you hit a certain level and you want to stay home, that's okay. We found even before this downturn that it was not good for certain people. We just looked at their productivity. They said they were set up at home, but their connect rates, their effort level. And I had to get rid of this whole idea of, well, I'm used to people being here at 8:30. We have a sales meeting at 8:30 and everybody leaves at 5, and you close the lights and put the cat back in. I had to shift to, I don't care when you're here. I just need to make sure you're productive. But it became pretty clear to us that a new person needs the osmosis, the cultural osmosis of hearing people around them, of asking the little questions about how do you attach this resume to Bullhorn, and just the we're in this together thing. And even though we did tons of, and still do, tons of Zoom training sessions and Zoom job order meetings, we decided our sort of sweet spot was, if you're not a partner, we have a hierarchy of partners, senior associates, and recruiters. Recruiters and associates have to be here 3 days a week. We don't care what 3 days it is, but we find that they're more productive when they're there. I try to schedule the training sessions during that time. I never stopped coming in because I didn't want to work from home. I wanted to be in my sort of control center in my office. But we found that sort of middle ground. But I still don't know if it's correct. Some days I feel like we should force everybody to come in and we'd all be happier. And other days I think this is insane. We don't need offices anymore, and I'm holding on to the past. It's a hard thing.
It
I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Well, the osmosis part that you mentioned is something that I think is invaluable. And that's what, someone comes out of school and they say, hey, I want to earn a good living, I want to work from home, and I want to move up in the organization. And it's like, okay, that's great, but the best way to move up in an organization, the best way to become successful is, to your point earlier, is to observe and emulate those that are successful and are where you want to go. And you can't do that in a 100% remote role unless you're going to go into business for yourself. And then if that's the case,
how do you develop
different.
managers? I don't know how you could ever develop managers.
Right.
That is another factor. And the other thing is, and I could rant about this for 3 days. My people are so sick of hearing me talk about it, but I think the single biggest issue, people always say to me, what do you think is the key to being a top producer? And, in the old days, it was your sales skills. And now it's some sort of combination of sales skills and systems engineering. And do you have the right tools? And I think all of that goes to hell compared to the lack of focus recruiters have due to the nature of social media and their phones. And I'm not saying it's significantly worse at home. I have no way of measuring that, but I certainly know nationally it's a huge issue. They say the average college student changes tasks every 25 seconds.
Scary.
And if you think, oh, that's just college kids. Well, the average adult at work stays on task for about 3 minutes. And after interruption, it takes 23 minutes to get back on task. And this is from Carnegie Mellon. Most American workers, according to Carnegie Mellon, never get a whole hour of uninterrupted time in a day. Never.
Wow.
I believe it too.
I believe it, but it's startling when you say it.
They say they're losing 30% we lose 30% of our brain power from distractions. So I believe in what's called pre-commitment. So I don't know if you guys recognize that term. So pre-commitment is, oh my God, it's as old as, Homer's Odyssey, right? So the original pre-commitment was, there's these beautiful sirens in the waters. And if the sailors hear the sirens call, then they can't resist the sirens and they get killed by the sirens. So Ulysses in Homer's Odyssey says, okay, I can't stand the distraction. I don't have the willpower. Tie me to the mast. And then they float by and he can't get to the sirens because he's tied to the mast. The explorers that first came to America, they were all scared they're going to get killed by the Indians, and they would have. So they burned their boats when they got there so that people couldn't escape. These are pre-commitment devices. Nowadays, I tell everybody in my office, I will pay for this because they all say to me, the problem is not the training. The problem is not the market. The problem is not my ambition. The problem is I check my phone all the time. Like I make 2 marketing calls and check my phone. I'm crafting an email, check my phone. We all do it. See people with family looking at their phones as opposed to this family member who just went through the holidays, right? How many times did you see, there's Uncle Fred, who you haven't seen in 10 years, but he's nowhere near as interesting as this Instagram picture I just got from someone who's posted 1,000 of them today, right? So the pre-commitment device for the modern world is called a K-file. Your listeners can look it up. It's on Amazon for $69. A K file is, it can be used if you're on a diet too, or if you're, worried about drunk driving. But for the most part, it's used for your cell phone. So people here know that I will pay for that's fully reimbursable in my office if you want to get a K file. So you come in the morning and you put your cell phone in your K file. It's a plastic box, but it's hard plastic, has a top with a timer. You put the cell phone in the K file, and let's say it's 8 o'clock in the morning and you've got a batch of marketing calls you got to make, and you want to go through the resumes that came in the night before from your sourcer. So you've got a block of work till about 10:30 you want to get to. But you don't trust yourself not to check your phone all the time and blow up your day. You put the phone in the K file, you set it for 10:30, and a nuclear bomb could land, and that thing will not open until 10:30.
There you
can't
go.
change it. Nobody can change it.
Was it hard getting adoption to that?
Huh?
Was it hard getting people to adopt to that?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it's weirdly similar to. I always tease people about this. We could solve alcoholism tomorrow. Anybody who leaves a rehab is given a pre-commitment option, and that is when you leave rehab, any alcoholic is told, "Look, this is going to be hard. You just have been dry for 30 days. You did all the hard work, but you're going to go back out in the real world, and all your friends know you as a drinker. So here's a prescription for Antabuse, which is a pill you take every morning. And if you take that Antabuse every morning, it has a 24-hour half-life. So if in that 24 hours after you take the pill in the morning, if you were to sip alcohol, you would get violently sick in a way you've never been sick in your life. So nobody drinks. Problem is 77% of people, when given that option, when they leave rehab, say, no, thanks. Now they'll say, no, thanks. I want to do this on my own. I want to show willpower. I want to be a changed person. And I get that here. I get, you know what? I want to be strong enough to have my phone, but not look at it. Why? Why would you want to do that? Why not understand that we all have temptations, that the world is set up to interrupt you? I get crazy about this because big tech, who's made me a lot of money, creates 11 billion interruptions a day. It's an arms race to steal the most important thing I have, and that is my time, right? Yep. That is their job. Eyeballs on sites, because that's how they get their ad revenue, right? So, yeah, I get a lot of pushback because people are so addicted to their phone. But if they can just get through it, what tends to happen, John, is they work in blocks. And, as you get more experience, well, it doesn't have to be 10:30. You can see it at 9:30. But here's the beauty of this. And this is true of all pre-commitment things. The more you get used to not having the distraction, the more you like not having the distraction. And I've seen people go, I don't need the K file anymore. I don't look at my phone till noon. I just throw my phone in my desk. But I can tell you the phone is blowing up more recruiting careers than any market factor the three of us could talk about.
Dude, I love what you said, because I've seen recruiters now, they're on the phone talking to a candidate and they're swiping at the same time. Absolutely. Now, how do you listen to that conversation?
Yeah. No,
it's like
crazy. And I'll tell you what, I'm done listening to young people tell me, well, dude, you don't think I'm really concentrating because, no offense, but you're a baby boomer and I'm a Gen Z person and we can multitask. That's crap. It's literally not true. Multitasking is a computer science term from the 1960s when they had two processors talk to themselves. So we stole that idea, made it a human thing, and said, I'm multitasking. That's not how the brain works. Well, you think you're multitasking, all you're really doing is switching from one thing to another quickly. Now, some of us can switch faster than others, but for the most part, when you say you're multitasking, something is not being done as well as it could be. Agreed. And guess what? Usually it's the hardest thing. It's not the easiest thing.
Agreed. Now,
good stuff, Trevor.
What do you see? Danny, we've just gotten through 2022.
Yeah.
We mentioned that there some industries like tech are already being hit. 2023. Yeah. What advice are you giving recruiters as far as, hey, in this coming year, although we can't foresee the future 100%, this is probably going to be like your path to surviving and succeeding this year? What are some things that might be different this year that they didn't have to worry about last year?
You know, John, I honestly believe, and again, I have a diversified firm because I got tired of tech going up and down, and it was like feast and famine. So we're pretty diversified. But even though we're diversified, I really believe the worst is kind of over. I really do. I think
Good.
I think when tech first started laying off people in the summer, remember that, you know, these big tech firms like Amazon and Facebook and Twitter and Google, you know, they carry a lot of weight. So when you read that Amazon lets go 10,000 people, people freak. Well, even though it may not have anything to do with your desk, what tends to happen is there's a cascading effect in tech. So a small software company who was doing pretty well and has referenceable customers and has a good product hears that Amazon laid off 10,000 people and Facebook let off 3,700, and they put a hold on hiring. That was happening a lot in Q4. I don't see that continuing. I think people have realized a couple things. The world didn't end because big tech let go a bunch of people. People understood that big tech always does this. They hire more people than they need in good times, and then they let go more people than they should during bad times. That most of this letting go is in the IT consulting, IT coding fields. Sales and marketing isn't hit as hard. Higher end IT people is not hit as hard. We already saw, and I say both my firm and the people that I consult with, they all in December told me, oh, you know, things are better. I'm starting to get some jobs back with the same amount of effort. So is it that the market's better? I do think it's some of that. Some of that is inflation has started to come down. So inflation has come down and wages have gone up a little bit, which makes the Fed nervous. But in reality, if you think about it, if wages go up 5% and inflation's up 6%, there's really only a 1% gap there, right? And there's so much money that the world was sitting on during COVID. Americans have never had more wealth, never had more money in a checking account. If it's just a little bit of a pullback, which most people predict it is, we'll probably weather that pretty easily. So all I think, not to oversimplify, but if you were doing no BD at all and you do 25% BD, you'll probably equal where you were last year. But it would be such a great time because, as Richard said, some recruiting firms are going to get hit hard. They were spending money like drunken sailors. They won't be able to make payroll. They'll go out of business. This would be a tremendous time to get their market share and go after some clients that are a little bit outside of your comfort zone. So that would be my other thing. It's just not a time if you say, but I was in IT and the tech sector was hit kind of hard, so I'm going to go into chemical engineering. No, what you do is you find a niche that is niche adjacent to what you know. So in my world, the last time tech was hit hard, I was like, well, we place salespeople in software companies. So I knew healthcare was great. I'm not going to start placing nurses. What do I know about nurses, right? What I'm going to do is find a niche adjacent to mine. So I started saying, well, biotech and life sciences companies have to sell stuff. How do they sell it? Yeah. Well, they don't call them salespeople, they call them BD people, but they're doing the same thing. So we went into life sciences business development professionals, which then led us into other parts of life sciences. But the point is to find something niche adjacent where you're not an imposter, where you might be able to use some of your referrals and database and might even be able to use some of the candidates. This would be a good time to do that. But you know, like any other time there's a pullback, I would really watch your costs. I would look at all the toys and tools you've bought and ask yourself, do I really need these? Am I on a month to month, or can I get out of this? I certainly think you need LinkedIn Recruiter. I'm not convinced you need anything else at this point. And you know, people have a lot of different toys.
Oh, they do. That tech stack. Look out, man. It keeps piling up.
Oh gosh.
I'll tell you what, the number one expense I had 10 years ago, aside from payroll, was group health. You know, the group health plan. Because I offer a group health plan and a 401k plan. That is now number 2 to LinkedIn Recruiter, which, you know, for a firm my size, I paid about $330,000 to last year. By
Now,
far
does
the
that
biggest.
function as your ATS?
No, we also have Bullhorn,
Gotcha.
and we use Bullhorn Analytics, which is a good product. But there's no way we could do what we do without LinkedIn Recruiter at this point, and they keep raising the price. Now, at some point, there's going to be a competitor, or I'm going to say, "Sorry, guys, I'm not paying $500,000 for LinkedIn Recruiter. I don't care." I don't know. I said that about $200,000 ago, but I'm still paying it because our revenues keep going up.
Clearly, it's yielding dividends enough to cover it. So
no question. But 10 times over. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
There's no argument. 10 times over. Yeah.
What's next for Danny Cahill? I mean, you've accomplished so much. You've impacted so many careers, my own included. Early in my recruiting career, I was fortunate to be sent to one of your seminars in Providence, Rhode Island, I think.
Yeah.
And that's where I first encountered you. And what I learned there just immediately paid dividends, and I continued to follow you throughout. But you've succeeded as a recruiter. You run a successful recruiting firm. You run a successful training, mentoring, and coaching firm.
Yeah.
You are a sought-after speaker worldwide. You've had best-selling books. By the way, his memoir, Aging Disgracefully, is an awesome read if you haven't read it. What you're a playwright.
Yep.
What's next? What's left on the bucket list for Danny Cahill to achieve?
Oh, I don't have a bucket list anymore. You know, I've reached the age where I have a fuck it list. There's things that I can stop doing.
Run for president, right?
I can stop doing things that I don't want to do anymore. I've got a third book that I am finishing up that should be out in the spring. You know, I just can't see it. I have so many friends who have retired, and you know, they struggle to fill the day. And you know, they chase a little white ball around a golf course, or they travel on cruise ships. And every time I talk to them, I'm just saying, I can't imagine doing that. Like, I can't imagine it. I'm just not that guy. I mean, as long as I'm still helping people, as long as I have something to add to the conversation, as long as I'm passionate about what I'm thinking about. I mean, there's no question. I get more satisfaction now when some speaker comes along that says, I did a session a couple of months ago, and at the conference, I went to see this new speaker, and he started sweating bullets, and he called me over and he said, "Look, I don't want you mad. Like, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say, I learned from you like 15 years ago." And I got the message. The message was, if you weren't here, I wouldn't give you any credit for what I'm about to say. But because you're in the audience, now I have to. I'm not competitive about that stuff at all. That's fun for me that it had any sort of impact. I don't know. At some point, I will no longer, have anything to contribute, and hopefully, I'll have enough grace to get out of everybody's way. But right now, I'm just hitting it as hard as I can for as long as I can. I don't have any. Awesome. I don't have any next step.
Love it, man.
I don't have any next step. I probably should, but I don't.
Hey, Johnny, any final thoughts, man? Go for it, brother.
This has been really enjoyable, Danny. It's great to see you again.
You too,
always great to hear your input and to talk with you. I wrote down two key things. The thing that I thought was very not surprising, but when I heard it, it was eye-opening, was, hey, what's it going to take to be successful in today's day and age as a recruiter? And a lot of it comes down to focus. And that focus.
It's your superpower. It's today's superpower.
Yeah, that really hit me hard. And also, if you're a firm that is heading into an unstable market and you want to expand, I like the idea of growing in a niche adjacent market where it's not something totally new, but something where you can leverage either your client base or your candidate base to go into, a new revenue stream. So a couple good nuggets. I appreciate your time.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Whenever. Always good to see you guys.
Thank you, Danny. Hey, all I can say, self-driven, brother. That is what I'm going to take from this, self-driven. And hey, my man, next time you're out at a conference, we're hitting a gym together, man. We'll do a little social media. We'll do a pump together. Is that a deal?
There you go.
Danny, pump it up.
I don't have the biceps to pump with you guys, so I'll just sit back and applaud.
John, you can hold our towel. Hey, everybody. Hey, thank you so much, Danny, again. Hey,
Thank
we'll
you,
see
guys.
y'all next week. Take care.
All right.
Take care.